All right, guys, so we're going to start this unit off with some basic cultural vocab. If you're taking notes, my suggestion is to start a new page for our new unit, Culture and Identity, and then probably even start a smaller subsection of cultural vocab or basic cultural vocab. Something like what we have pictured here. Feel free to hit the pause button and create that, but I'm going to keep moving on. So this whole unit is about culture and identity, and culture is a tough thing to define because it's almost everything. It's all the different things that identify an individual and where they come from. It could be their race, their ethnicity, religion, country, city, languages, financial status, art, drama, music, attitudes, beliefs, languages, behavior, food. Everything is culture. It's hard to think of things that aren't culture. But we do notice that things change when you go from group to group. And those common things shared, that's what makes up culture. And then cultural traits are just aspects of culture that you can see or study. So we have some listed here: norms, behaviors, beliefs, values, material objects. And we're going to go over all of those different types of cultural traits. So let's start with norms and behaviors, because those two go together. So norms, they're these social rules and expectations that guide behavior of individuals. Sometimes they're written down, but mostly they're just unwritten. Like when you go to Subway, the sandwich shop, you don't just go up there and order a number 3 and then they hand you a bunch of food. You know, you have to know the order and what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go and order your bread, then your proteins, then your vegetables and sauces and oils and whatnot, then your chips and your drink. And there's a process. And we don't go to school to learn how to order at Subway, but we just kind of notice everyone else doing that, and they kind of help guide us through. That's kind of what social norms are. These unspoken of, sometimes spoken of rules and expectations that guide our behaviors. And behaviors are actions that people do. Often, but not always, they're based on norms. Norms telling us what behaviors we should do, what behaviors we shouldn't do. Think of it as peer pressure. But peer pressure is not only for bad things, it's for everything. We act based on how society tells us we should act and how our friends tell us we should act. More on that later. This next two set of terms are beliefs and values, and these go together also. Beliefs are statements that we feel are true about the world. Often, but not always, they can be based on religion. An example of belief is all humans are born good, or all humans are born with sin. Another belief could be there is a God, there isn't a God. Life's not fair. All of these are different types of beliefs. And then our values are almost always tied in with our beliefs. And our values are defined standards that serve as a guide for individuals to assess how good something is, how beautiful something is, how desirable an event or action is. And so an example is, if you believe that hard work pays off, and everyone has equal opportunity, then your values will probably consist of discipline, perseverance, maybe even individuality. But if you believe that everyone wants to be successful, but some of us have more access to opportunity than others, then your values might be a little different. They might be more charity, or community, or compassion. Either way, our values and our beliefs tend to go hand in hand. So whether you're writing the notes or you're doing a reflection, this is a helpful exercise. And that's create a sentence or two that correctly use these terms: norms, behaviors, beliefs, and values. So create a sentence. You can do 2 or 3 if you need to. Just make sure you're using these terms correctly. Feel free to hit that pause button, and then I'm going to give you my sentence. I'm going to give you one more second to pause so you don't get my sentence before you make yours. It's a good exercise, so you should do that. So my example, it's not perfect, but it's that our behavior is guided by social norms, and we tend to get our values based on our beliefs. I have all 4 of those words used accurately in this sentence. And you notice I said social norms instead of norms. Oftentimes we see norms with social in it because they're socially constructed, socially enforced. Social meaning with multiple people. So going on, we're about halfway through the notes right now. We have material and non-material culture. Think of material culture as anything that's man-made and shared by a group. Art, clothing, food, sports, dance. A lot of times it's things you can touch or things you can see, but not always, right? I can touch a football, but I can't touch football. I can see a football game, but I can't see football. So you can't always see or touch material culture, but you often can. And then there's non-material culture, and this is more thoughts and behaviors that people learn. Think of gestures, languages, values, norms, politics, economics. All sorts of different things make up non-material culture, and they're often very important. Now, there's many different types of culture. One of the ones we'll focus on is pop culture, also known as popular culture. And this is culture transmitted by mass media, by the radio, by television, by movies, social media. And it spreads fast, and it seems to be everywhere. And it can be material culture, it can be non-material culture. And we see a picture that has dozens of examples. And the fact that you know probably most of these says a lot about how pervasive pop culture is. And we know all about pop culture thanks to cultural diffusion. Diffusion is basically a bougie term for spreads. So cultural diffusion is how culture spreads. On the left, we have this example of how K-pop became a global phenomenon. It started in South Korea and it made its way all around the world, even in the United States. In addition to pop music, we also have religions that spread. This example on the right shows us Christianity, how it started in Jerusalem and then spread through parts of Africa, the Middle East, and almost all of Europe, eventually before, dominating the world. Pop culture diffuses quickly. It uses mass media to spread rapidly. And so cultural diffusion is the act of culture spreading, while cultural diffusers are the people or structures that spread or teach culture. Some examples we have here are, a parent teaching their child how to ride a bike, friends pressuring another friend. Friends teach us a lot of things: what to wear, what to say, what not to say, what to do, what not to do. We also have social media influencers, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch. Those are big ones where you have people that are often paid to promote certain products or lifestyles. But it doesn't have to be people. It could be structures. It could be, the education system. That teaches us a lot. Families, those teach us a lot. When we have people within those structures, but the structures themselves also are a big part of spreading culture. And then our final term for notes is assimilation. And assimilation is a very important term. Sometimes it can be voluntary, other times it could be forced. But it's where people are absorbed into the dominant culture of a region. Right? Anywhere you are, there's always a dominant culture where those people have power. And often it's the majority of people, but not always. And so assimilation is when other people in the outgroup, they start to adopt some of those behaviors. It often involves changing behaviors to match social norms. And a great example is this classic idea of America as a melting pot, where people come from all sorts of different countries. We see China, the United Kingdom, and India as just a few in that pot. And they bring parts of their culture with them, but they also absorb into the greater American culture. The sports we watch, the music we listen to, the movies we see, the language we have, and lots of other things that we don't even notice is particular to America. And so that's assimilation. It's important to keep in mind the power dynamics of who has power and who doesn't, who's expected to change their culture and who's expected to be able to keep their culture. That's an important thing to think about also. And so that concludes our lecture. Remember, you have to demonstrate your knowledge in one of three ways. You could have taken notes this whole time and take a picture of them. You could write a 5+ sentence summary reflection about what you've learned, or you could record a 45+ second audio or video reflection. Whatever you do, make sure you turn it into Culture Vocab on Schoology, and then make sure you meet back in class. You can check the Zoom for the specific time.